It is Tuesday, May 6th, and President Trump and RFK Jr. making history, signing the most impactful executive order of his presidency, officially ending gain-of-function research effective immediately. RFK Jr. stunning the room, delivering a chilling history lesson on the insane backstory of this dangerous practice. And guess whose name keeps coming up during this? Anthony Fauci. We'll show you. Also, President Trump meeting Canada's newly elected Prime Minister, Mark Carney, this morning, meeting in the Oval Office, the man who was elected to stand up to Donald Trump. Wait till you see what happened. Learning his place, and the Houthis have capitulated. President Trump announcing we will terminate our bombing campaign effective immediately after the Houthis called to surrender last night. We'll show you that and more stories as well from around the country. But before we get started, thank you for liking and sharing these videos. It really helps out the channel. And consider subscribing so you don't miss these regular updates. So Canada's new Prime Minister, Mark Carney, traveling to 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue this morning, meeting with President Trump only a week after winning the election, which he campaigned on, standing up to Donald Trump. That was his whole campaign message. Canada is not for sale. We will not bend or break. We will never be bought by the United States. Nervously reiterating this message in his joint press conference today, sitting beside President Trump, nervously getting the words out, Canada will never be for sale. Trump responding, never say never, Carney. Watch.
They get along very well. They like each other a lot.
Well, if I may, as you know from real estate, there are some places that are never for sale.
That's true.
We're sitting in one right now, Buckingham Palace that you visited as well.
That's true.
And having met with the owners of Canada over the course of the campaign last several months, it's not for sale, won't be for sale ever. But the opportunity is in the partnership and what we can build together. And we have done that in the past. And part of that, as the president just said, is with respect to our own security. And my government is committed for a step change in our investment in Canadian security and our partnership, and I'll say this as well, that the president has revitalized international security, revitalized NATO, and us playing our full weight in NATO, and that will be part of it.
And they have, I must say, Canada is stepping up the military participation because Mark knew, they were low, and now they're stepping it up, and that's a very important thing. But never say never. Never say never.
Then the conversation got real. Carney, remember, flying down to meet Trump to get on the same page with these tariffs. He was elected to straighten this mess up. From Canada's point of view, it's a mess. All of a sudden, their companies can no longer sell product into the U.S. without a 10% universal tariff, plus a 25% tariff for all cars, auto parts, steel, and aluminum. Carney coming down to D.C. this morning to try and fix this, to try to reach a deal to remove these tariffs. That's what he was just elected on, what he promised Canadians he would deliver. Well, he hit a big, giant wall, a.k.a. Donald Trump. Watch.
We are the largest client of the United States in the totality of all the goods. So we are the largest client of the United States. We have a tremendous auto sector between the two of us, and the changes that made have been helpful. 50% of a car that comes from Canada is American. That's not like anywhere else in the world. And to your question about is there one thing? No, this is a bigger discussion. There are much bigger forces involved, and this will take some time and some discussions, and that's why we're here, to have those discussions, and that is represented by who's sitting around the table.
See, the conflict is, and this is very friendly. We're not. This is not going to be like we had another little blow up with somebody else. That was a much different. This is a very friendly conversation, but we want to make our own cars. We don't really want cars from Canada, and we put tariffs on cars from Canada, and at a certain point, it won't make economic sense for Canada to build those cars. And we don't want steel from Canada because we're making our own steel, and we're having massive steel plants being built right now as we speak. We really don't want Canadian steel, and we don't want Canadian aluminum and various other things because we want to be able to do it ourselves. And we, because of, past thinking of people, we have a tremendous deficit with Canada. In other words, they have a surplus with us. And there's no reason for us to be subsidizing Canada. Canada's a place that will have to be able to take care of itself economically. I assume they can. I will tell you that Trudeau, when I spoke to him, I used to call him Governor Trudeau. I think that probably didn't help his election. But when I spoke to him, I said, so why are we taking your cars? Why are we taking we want to make them ourselves. I said, and if the price of your cars went up, or if we put a tariff on your cars of 25%, what would that mean to you? He said, that would mean the end of Canada. He actually said that to me. And I said, that's a strange answer, but I understand his answer. But no, it's hard to justify subsidizing Canada to the tune of maybe $200 billion a year. We protect Canada militarily, and we always will. We're going to, that's not a money thing. But we always will. But, it's not fair. But why are we subsidizing Canada $200 billion a year, or whatever the number might be? It's a very substantial number. And it's hard for the American taxpayer to say, gee whiz, we love doing that.
Look, it's very simple. 90% of all Canadian exports are imported to the States. That's a huge portion of their GDP. But the truth is, we have that arrangement at the expense of American workers and American companies. For 40 years, our car companies can't sell to Canadians. It makes no sense. Our farmers can't sell to Canadians, but Canadians can sell to Americans. Why? How does that make any sense? Canada has over 100% tariffs on American agriculture. This is what makes no sense. It's why Trump says we're essentially subsidizing Canada. And it's not fair. There's nothing Canada has, nothing they build or make that we don't have. We don't need their cars. We don't need their crops. We don't need their lumber. So therefore, this arrangement where we subsidize you at the expense of $200 billion a year is over. In another story, after a thorough investigation into gain-of-function research, President Trump, with RFK Jr. and NIH head Jay Bhattacharya, holding a signing ceremony in the Oval Office yesterday to announce the official end to all government-funded gain-of-function research. President Trump signing the order banning this research, all current or future research projects, grants, or plans terminated today. Stop your work. We are shutting you down. Roll the tape.
First relates to gain-of-function research. Gain-of-function research is a type of biomedical research where pathogens are adulterated, viruses are adulterated to make them more potent or to change the way that they function. Many people believe that gain-of-function research was one of the key causes of the COVID pandemic that struck us in the last decade. What this executive order does, first of all, it provides powerful new tools to enforce the ban on federal funding for gain-of-function research abroad. It also strengthens other oversight mechanisms related to that issue and creates an overarching strategy to ensure that biomedical research in general is being conducted safely and in a way that ultimately protects human health more.
The order pulling all funding effective immediately, no wait time, again, for all present or future gain-of-function research. Your projects end today. The order also deputizing NIH and other agencies to identify and requiring them to now notify both the president and the public to any biological threat to public health. This is the kind of research that many believe led directly to the pandemic. Trump holding up the signed order saying it's a big deal. Could have been that we wouldn't have had this problem if we had done this earlier. Watch.
It's a big deal. Could have been that we wouldn't have had the problem we had.
A lot of people say that, sir.
If we had this done earlier. Thank you.
For years, RFK Jr. has been blowing the whistle about this type of research, trying to inform the public, which got him blackballed, ostracized. A full media blackout order was put out on RFK Jr. how things have changed, right? 1 year ago, YouTube would remove any clip of RFK Jr. You could not put a clip of RFK in your YouTube video or it would immediately come down. Fast forward to today, he's not just a whistleblower, he's the active Senate-approved Secretary of Health and Human Services. Yesterday, standing next to the president in the Oval Office, calling this a turning point and laying out the cold, chilling history behind this type of research in America, explaining its origins, rooting back to the U.S. Defense Department at Fort Detrick and CIA, something that would have been hard to imagine being said, let alone in the Oval Office a few years ago. Roll the tape.
This is an historic day, the end of gain-of-function research funding by the federal government and also controls by private corporations on gain-of-function studies. This was a kind of study that was engaged in by the United States military and intelligence agencies beginning in 1947. By 1969, the CIA said that they had reached nuclear equivalency, that they could kill the entire U.S. population for 29 cents a person. That year, President Nixon went to Fort Detrick and announced a unilateral end to this kind of research, what they called dual-use research, research that was for vaccination and also for military purposes. He then persuaded over 180 countries to sign the Bioweapons Charter in 1973. That basically ended gain-of-function research around the globe until 2002. Until 2001, after the anthrax attacks, we passed the Patriot Act, and the Patriot Act had a provision, a little-known provision in it, that said that although the Bioweapons Charter is still in effect, and the Geneva Convention is still in effect, U.S. federal officials who violate it cannot be prosecuted. And that relaunched bioweapons arms race, and that was driven by gain-of-function research. In 2014, 3 of those bugs escaped from U.S. labs, and President Obama declared a moratorium on future use, and instead a lot of that research was moved offshore to the Wuhan lab.
In another story, the bombing campaign against the Houthis in Yemen is over today. President Trump announcing this during his press conference this morning with Mark Carney, saying the Houthis, calling him up last night and surrendering, capitulating. They surrender, and we will stop bombing all ships traveling through the strait. Trump saying, I'm going to take them at their word for now. If they stop blowing up ships, which they promised they will, then we're going to stop the bombing. Watch.
We had some very good news last night. The Houthis have announced that they are not, or they've announced to us at least, that they don't want to fight anymore. They just don't want to fight. And we will honor that. And we will stop the bombings. And they have capitulated, but more importantly, we will take their word. They say they will not be blowing up ships anymore. And that's what the purpose of what we were doing. So that's just news. We just found out about that. So I think that's very, very positive. They were knocking out a lot of ships going, as you know, sailing beautifully down the various seas. It wasn't just the canal. It was a lot of other places. And I will accept their word, and we are going to stop the bombing of the Houthis. Effective immediately.
Now, if you're wondering why Trump's even involved with Yemen at all, it's because it's one of the responsibilities that falls upon him, falls upon the United States, whether he likes it or not. We maintain and control the global maritime empire map, a responsibility that used to be handled and maintained by the British Empire, but was taken over by the U.S. a century ago. There's no other country or military on the planet that can keep all maritime choke points open and operational besides the U.S. Trump's been trying to pass more of this responsibility over to other countries, pushing NATO countries to pay more and participate more so the work doesn't all fall on the U.S., plus the expense all fall on the U.S. because it's expensive. But at the moment, it does. Well, mission complete. The shipping routes are now open again, and we can stop wasting $100 million a day dropping bombs over there, good riddance. All right, that wraps up this episode. Like, subscribe. We'll see you next time.